Good morning, everyone. It is the first Monday in March, Tirsa, and that's unbelievable to me that March is here already. I don't know how this happens, but you're with us. Whether you're commuting, maybe you snuck away for an early break, thank you for being with us. You know, I love when you show up in the comments. So please jump in the comments, introduce yourself, let us know that you are here listening. And Tirsa, I'm going to let you tell everybody who you are.
Okay, sure. Good morning. I am Tirsa Hall, and I am originally from the beautiful islands of Turks and Caicos, and I am a mom first. Mom to two beautiful autistic girls named Brooklyn Lyric and a son who is gifted, a wife, but I'm also from a professional arena. I am a work culture and HR expert. I have my own company, Impactful Imprint Training and Consulting, and what we do is all things people centric. So whether it's creating harmony in the workspace, solving deep rooted conflict, I love everything that is about the people. And so that is my passion and life's work. And I am so excited to be here today. I'm so excited for what we're going to be talking about. Thanks for having me.
Yes. Well, and Tirsa and I were fellow authors. So we authored a contributed to an anthology book on culture. That's how we first met. And
Amazon.
I have to tell you, Tirsa is I wish I had Tirsa's humor and sense of playfulness. So I'm going to drop, I showed you her website, tirsahall.com. But if you're not following her, she's on Instagram, she's on TikTok, she's on YouTube. You need to find one of these channels and make sure that you're following Tirsa because she will make you laugh out loud. Be careful if you have a drink in your hand because she nails, I mean, as somebody who spent years in HR too, she really nails the HR life sometimes in ways that I appreciate so enormously. So your energy and your fun is very infectious, Tears. It's one of my favorite things about you. But today we're going to talk about something that's somewhat a little bit more serious than that. But I think it is something that many people, men and women, relate to, and that is feeling the competing commitment of your professional self.
Great title. What a great topic. I think everyone experiences that in their life. And for me, I my life that I currently live now, I wouldn't have imagined it to be what it is. And it's all because of life, the changes and the journeys and the voices and how we respond to them. And so background, my career started in HR and hospitality, and I lived in Turks and Caicos. So that is the backdrop to where my scene started. And I love my life in Turks and Caicos. It's beautiful. I mean, who wouldn't want to live in Turks and Caicos, right? But I had my life just completely took a turn. I say a pivot, a extreme hard right when my twin girls, they were only 3 years old, they were diagnosed with autism. Now, in the Caribbean countries, and I think even just in the US, we know how getting resources for autism is always a challenge. And so uh, I had to make a decision. My career was thriving. I, again, was a senior HR director for luxury resorts in Turks and Caicos. And so I had a great career and I had a great life and I had a simple life. And so when my daughters got diagnosed, it was kind of like, okay, so now you know, what are you going to do about it? And so that's when the voices really start to kick in, because the first thing is, oh, I like my life. I like the way things are. And I like, the things that I'm doing and the difference that I'm making in the community and with the people and the employees. And I love that. And what do I do? Because I have to make a decision. And I not only had to make a decision, but I had to do it quickly, because it was literally in a matter of another month, my daughters would have need to be placed into a program and a school, which meant a quick move. And so the
Oh,
voice,
wow.
yeah,
Wow. There's some pressure right there. And
pressure,
that's going to set off anybody's internal like anxiety voices,
of course.
right? I mean, like anxiety is just going to flood your system.
Yeah. And no one likes to make a decision that's tough and make it fast. And so the initial thought was, what are you going to do? How are you going to figure this out? But the thought that kind of really started to take over was, if you don't make the right decision now for your daughters, will you be able to live with that? how will you cope with the fact that you know that there's opportunity to do something that will benefit them and you decide not to? That would be a question that will haunt me for the rest of my time, because you want to make sure that you're making the right decision, and you also want to make sure that you don't have regrets. And for me, that was the big thing. I didn't want to let my daughters down, but I knew that I couldn't live with the thought that I wouldn't have made the right decision, and I would have to look at years that I couldn't go back to, that I couldn't change. I could try this, and if it doesn't work, I could resume my old life, or I could resume a remake of my old life. But what I couldn't do is get back those critical years. At the time, my daughters were 3 to 5 is usually the critical time frame for when you intervene with autism and trying to put strategies in, because that's when the brain is most elastic. And so trying to make the right decision is, this is the time window. You can't get this time window back. Forget about, how am I going to finance this? Where am I going to live? I had none of those things figured out, but I knew that I couldn't give up that moment, and I really needed to do what was best. We all say, we're mothers first, or we all say that we are parents and we prioritize our children, but we don't know what we're going to do when we're in that exact moment. And I think in that moment, that's when I realized that I truly was what I said I was a mom first, because I was able to say, okay, I literally said to my company, I'm gonna go. I don't know how I'm gonna figure it out, but I have to leave. I have to do what's best for my daughters. And so that's essentially what we did. We started an action plan to move. I was blessed with an organization that was willing to work with me, and so we created a 2-year plan to start, which ended up almost 4 years in the making, where I was able to kind of balance and juggle between the two lives to ensure that my daughters got what they needed, and I would never have that regret. And so I'm extremely grateful, forever grateful, for the opportunity that shaped that. And I'm glad I made the decision that I made in that moment.
Well, so there's multiple decisions here, right? So I want to talk a minute about um, the thoughts that were going on in your head when you thought about, you made this decision. I'm going to do what I need to do for my daughters. And that sounds like it felt like, and that might mean sacrificing not just your life in Turks and Caicos, but this professional pathway that you were on. You're nodding your head. Yes. And I think a lot of us come to moments for all kinds of reasons. Sometimes it's your spouse gets a job offer somewhere, right? I mean, there's all kinds of things that come at us like that put us in this moment where we're like, do I really have to give up? I've worked so hard to get to this place. Am I really ready to walk away from that? So you had already made the decision. You've gotten through that part of it. What were some of the stories, the fears, the anxiety stories about going to your employer? And what had you steeled yourself for in going to your employer, if anything?
I think for me, with the thoughts that were in my head about what my employer would do or say, I kind of avoided those. When I say I avoided those, I mean, I didn't even go and ask, is there something we could work out? I didn't go with that approach. I kind of went with the worst case scenario, and I was like preparing myself for the worst case scenario. And I was like, you know what? Regardless of what the outcome is, I'm going to do what I need to do. And so I didn't think to say, what can you offer, or can we figure out something? So when I went there to share that, I really was at the mindset of, I hope they understand the circumstance, because my role was very critical, and I had a very huge portfolio, and I also had a very cemented career and presence in the community at the time. So I knew that that also was something that they would need to adjust to, and I didn't want that adding on the weight I already had of trying to figure out what was happening. So the thoughts in my head prior to going was, oh, what are they going to say? Is that a possibility? Is that even a possibility where I could do something on both ends and make it work? So I had all of those thoughts, but when I got there, it was kind of just like, this is what's happening. And I am so, like I said, I'm so blessed because not always are we in a scenario where the people around us help us to make decisions or help lean us towards the direction of what is good. And I think organizations that have leaders in it that are mindful of the stories that their employees may be telling themselves, it's a whole other arena, right? Because at least
Yes.
you can read your employees and you can see what they're experiencing. You can help them get to the surface what they're feeling and figure out a solution that is win-win, that mutually benefits both people involved. And so I think that,
Well, I would say, Tirsa, that you fell into a thinking trap that is very common when if you are somebody who is a high achiever. You've taken on big things at work. You take ownership for your work. You drive and make things happen. You're that go-getter that your boss can count on, and that's part of the persona that you have. It's not surprising to me that the thought you have is, this is my problem to fix. That it's I'm not supposed to go, just like, if something came up at work, you didn't go dump the problem at your boss's feet. You came to your boss with a solution. So
yes,
you use that same playbook instead of reaching out and saying, wow, help me think this through. You were like, I gotta have a solution. I can't go just dump a problem at my boss's feet. I gotta figure all of this out,
yes. And some,
and then I got to go get through. So you were just playing the playbook that you have. And I
right.
think part of when we were doing our brainstorming session about this, I mean, part of the insight that you really have to share is you wish you might have challenged that thinking a little bit within yourself, especially once you got to the meeting and you saw how receptive your boss was. But I did the same exact thing. When I walked out of my corporate life, I didn't go to my boss and say, look, my husband wants to go back to work. We're thinking about this, and she ended up offering me a part-time job, which I didn't go for because I knew part-time meant do the same amount of work for less money. So at the time, that was just not going to work. And not just because of them, but because of me, because of who I was. But, I think that we are conditioned be to be excellent as a professional means to own your crap. And in that moment, you sort of stay with it. But how else, looking back now retrospectively, if there's anybody who's listening who is in the same situation, or maybe you have a family member in a similar situation, what guidance would you give them about overcoming that story of they've got to have the solution themselves and they can't ask for help?
Yeah, you have to. You're that's not sustainable. I can tell you right now, that's probably one of the biggest lessons I've learned being a mom to twins that are autistic. It's that you can't do everything on your own. It is okay to realistically consider the options. You're not begging, you're really just balancing and seeing what opportunities are there. I think too, don't underestimate what you bring to the table also, because a lot of times we see ourselves as in need for someone to relieve us or in need for someone to accommodate us, but our absence really might critically impair that particular person we're attached to. So leaving an organization, you may think, oh well, I hope everything is good here, or maybe good in case I come back. But the value, the hard work, the time, the care, the passion, the dedication you've been giving to that role increased your value. Your value is there. And
Ding,
so,
ding, ding. Right. So stop seeing yourself as a burden in this situation,
yes,
because you are not a burden. You are a value.
yes, a high value at that, right? So recognizing that is important. And so considering mutually beneficial grounds is not something that you need to avoid. That's something you should embrace, and you should see that as a opportunity to not only help yourself but to help the both parties that are involved. Seeing your value is so critical.
It is. And you don't have to be all like, oh, I'm so important. You got to make it like, right. You don't have to be that guy. You don't have to be that way about it, but you can when the voice inside of your head is telling you you're the problem child. Right now, you're being the problem child. You need to say, thank you very much. I don't want to show up as the problem child, but I do bring value. You need to step back in and own that you actually have something to give. And luckily, your boss sort of met you there and said, hey Tirsa, we don't want to lose you. We have, let's figure out what this looks like. So what so you get this lifeline. You have this conversation with your boss. He's offering you this lifeline. But I still have this sense that there's probably fear and anxiety are still right there at the console, inside out of your mind, like just like hitting you up. So what did it take for you to be able to trust in yourself and in your relationship with your company to be able to move forward?
My faith. I can't put into words my faith. I know that everyone has a different choice of religion, but I'm not ashamed to admit that I am a Christian and I believe in those values and faith and being grounded and being able to trust what you cannot see is so important when you come to life in these changes and shifts. You don't know what's going to happen. There isn't always going to be an indicator of your whether or not you're on the right track. And so you have to trust your instinct. You have to trust the feeling that you have in your gut, and you have to, be prayerful and faithful. And I think for me, if you look at me before I had this diagnosis, I was one of the safest people you would have ever met. Entrepreneurship, no thanks. I wouldn't have been signing up to own my own business and deal with the surprise factors. I love the consistency and the safety. And this threw me out of the safety net.
Mm.
And I am so blessed that it did, because it allowed me to see a potential for myself that I had never saw, and allowed me to see and go through the experience of what entrepreneurship was like. And I was able to realize the value of fear, right? But a lot of times when we are afraid of something, we allow it to cripple us. We allow it to stop us from moving forward. And for me, I turned my fear into my greatest motivator. So I never knew what was going to happen, but I was like, oh, this has to happen. I have to figure out a plan. And so I started to work diligently towards that plan, using my fear to say, oh, if you don't have a plan B, this is what's going to happen, and putting those things in order and in space and time. And that allowed me to be very proactive and consistently proactive. And so by the time I really had to be on my own, I was on a smooth transition. My momentum was already developed. And so I believe that you have to have faith. You have to believe, even if that religion is not your choice. Believe that good can come and change will be put into place, and that I will that into existence, and that I will do everything necessary. One of the times, my sister, I was struggling studying for an exam. I had literally no time to study. And my sister, my youngest sister, shout out to her if she's listening, Ashley, she said to me the day before the exam, I was like, oh, I still don't have enough time. I'm trying to be a mom. I'm studying. I'm doing all these things. And she said, when you put that kind of work and dedication and time into what you do, the universe has no choice but to show up for you. It will work out.
Wow.
Work.
Wow. That was so, shout out to Ashley. Is that her name? Oh my gosh. To have somebody pour into you in a hard moment like that. Like, take note. Let's say these words one more time for all of our leaders out there. If you have team members around you, you need to write this down, carry it around with you, and remind you need to pour these words into people around you. Say them again, Tirsa.
If you put in all of the hard work that you put in for yourself, it is impossible for the universe not to grant you that acceptance and that win. It will happen because you've done the work, you've put the dedication in, and only good will come from that. When you have zoned in and given your full dedication to something, it will show up. And she was right. It took me like an hour to open up that results, but when I opened it, it was right and spot on. And I've taken that with me in every aspect of my life. That when I become fearful, when those stories I'm telling myself is saying I'm failing, that I'm not going to get it, that this is a waste of time, we haven't seen any progress. I always go back to what she said. And she said, when you put in that work, you just make sure you put in the work. When you put in that work, nothing but results is going to
Yeah,
come.
the universe is going to show up for you. I love that. The universe is going to show up for you. You know,
Yeah.
one of my favorite books, we were talking before we went live to everybody about classic books. And one of the classic books that I teach all the time is the book Good to Great. And in the book Good to Great, there is the story about the soldiers being held at the Hanoi Hilton,
Mhm.
and this idea of unwavering belief that you will conquer. So, you know, the Admiral Stockdale, he would tell the soldiers, look, they're going to take you and they're going to torture you, and you're going to fight for a really long time, and then there's going to come a point where you are going to give in. So let's plan for that. What are you going to give that isn't going to put your fellow soldiers at risk, that's going to be good enough to get you through that moment,
Yes.
but you will give in? It will happen, and you need a plan for that. And he guided these young men through this process by saying these things. And just, we have to have unwavering belief that we will get to the other side of this. It's going to be hard. It's going to be, we're not going to pretend like it's not going to be hard. We're not going to pretend like you guys will never break
Right.
under the pressure of that torture. Let's let's not pretend that. And I think there's so much power in that, because that's what you were doing for yourself. You were saying, I have to go through this hard period,
Yeah.
you know, but I have, you said, faith. You, whether you are a spiritual person or not, you can have the belief
Yes.
that you have it within you to get to the other side of whatever hardship it is that
Yes.
is that you are facing down.
That keeps hope alive, right? It's belief that keeps your hope alive. I always say you have to have somewhere to center your thoughts, center your desires, center your beliefs toward, because if you don't, then you're blowing every which way with the wind. But if you have a solid belief, I truly believe that that's what starts the shaping of the story you tell yourself. Because as your belief becomes stronger and as you start to see signs manifesting of where you're going and getting on the right track. It's like your foot stepping. You don't see anything, but all of a sudden there's a board underneath. All of a sudden there's a tile underneath. And so as you start to see those signs, then the story you tell yourself starts to change. So don't expect that you're going to come out the gate like, oh, I have it all figured out. I am going to be success. And the story I'm telling myself from day one is yes, yes. Maybe you're saying I am 82% strong in believing that I can do this. And as those signs start to pop up, oh, 89, oh, 92, oh, 100. And so now you start to see why entrepreneurs can keep going and they have these setbacks and they're still going because they've experienced enough of these little temporary setbacks that the story they tell themselves is you're going to get out of this one just like you got out of the last one. And you're going to continue to
Yes.
get out of this one just like you got out of the last one. And at the very last moment, just when you think you don't have any new work coming in, boom, God steps in and blesses you, or the universe steps in and blesses you. And you now start to see that the way you condition your mind is important, right? You have to tell yourself good and positive things because they set the tone for the steps you will take. Your actions are directly motivated by the story you tell yourself. If you believe, then you are working more diligently towards what it is that you have in front of you. If you have no strong belief, then you're not as urgently moving towards the direction of where you want to go. If I said there's a pot of gold somewhere down south of Florida, your sense of urgency isn't going to move as quickly as if I said there's a pot of gold on the corner of 22nd Street and 3rd Road specific, right? And so you have to start to believe and start to believe specifically for yourself what it is that you want to accomplish and get yourself there. And every day won't be perfect. And some days, the story you tell yourself isn't even related to your goals. Some days, the story you're telling yourself is just to get you to the next step. One moment, one day at a time. What am I going to do? Or how do I need to affirm myself to get through today? And maybe tomorrow I'm back on track. So, your story.
I think this is so important because and this is part of what Jim Collins talks about when he tells the Admiral Stockdale story, because there were soldiers that didn't make it out.
Right.
There were soldiers that succumbed to what he considered to be sort of heartbreak, because the story they were telling themselves was, oh, well, we'll be out of here by Christmas. And then Christmas came and went, and they were back getting tortured again. And they weren't mentally prepared for that. Oh, well, it'll happen by Easter. So it's important what you're saying. It's a belief in your ability to navigate no matter what comes your way. And having some places for you. I just had a conversation with somebody who was doing a coaching with her about some career change stuff that she is working on. And we were, and I said, you do understand that the sales thing is, 10 touches before you get a yes, right? I mean, you're going to get 10 no's before you get a yes. So, and she stopped and she said, okay, I'm ready. And I said, okay, what happened? And she said, you just helped me realize I've only done 10% of the work. I've done once and I didn't get the response I wanted and I stopped there. And that's exactly what you're talking about. Like, you have to understand that that if the unrealistic thing you have in your head is that it's all going to be easy and it's all going to come together, you're going to be sorely disappointed, because that is also an erroneous story to tell yourself. But if you tell yourself, I have the strength, I know where I want to be, and I have the strength to persist through all the hard that comes my way.
Yes.
Right. And a mother's love gives you
Oh, it does.
that, right?
It does. It really does. You have to. I think. I think it's important that you're true to the things that are important, right? They always say things that matter most must never be at mercy of the things that matter least. And so recognizing that you have to respond to the thoughts that are in your head, not only professionally, but personally, right? Sometimes we sacrifice one side for the other, but it makes it all worth it when you make the right choice, when you decide to brave past some of the negative thoughts, some of the thoughts that scare you. I always say on the other side of the negative thoughts, when you overcome them, is true victory. When you really start to see, and you start to see what you could have missed if you listened to those voices that told you this couldn't be done, to give up, to not try, to not consider options. Because I left my job that I really enjoyed as an operation, but I gained it as an entrepreneur, and I'm doing it for myself. I am doing my life's passion. I was in HR operations, which dealt with a lot of, like, the administrative elements of things. Now I focus mostly on learning and development, mostly on, conflict resolution, people work, change management. So I'm able to do all of the things I've always wanted to do, some more, because I always kind of squeezed everything I could in. But this was one of the greatest rewards that I have gotten for answering and responding and beating the negative stories I was telling myself and replacing them with good stories, positive stories, stories of change, stories of possibilities, stories of the power that lies in the risks that we decide to take.
Yes. And and the other piece that you said, which I want to equally emphasize, is that specificity. Like, the other part of it is, I mean, you knew my girls need to be in this program. They need to be getting these kind of services. That specificity gave you that centering on what matters most. And I think many times we end up in the struggle because we don't have that level of clarity about what we really want. So we get lost in the messy middle because we are missing that clarity.
Yes, I think that that's so important. We're cliffhanging. I call it cliffhanging. We're like at the edge of the cliff, and we're like, "Oh, something has to change. Something has to change." I don't know if you listen to Mel Robbins, right? She has a podcast, and she says, "No one's coming." That I tell myself that all the time when I get stuck on the shelf, and I'm like, what do I do? What do I do?" And she's like, she comes into my head, and she says, "No one's coming. No one's coming to fix this." And so the worst thing you can be is handicapped to your thoughts and not take action. You have to will yourself to action. And either sometimes that comes, like you said, involuntarily, meaning a company fires you or you quit or you decide, you only have 2 minutes and you had to make the decision. But sometimes it also comes when you seek it, because
Mm.
actively seeking it, you don't see the signs that are there that are telling you that this is the right way to go. And so sometimes you're worried, but you're not praying, or you're thinking about it, but you're not looking around and exploring options. You're wanting answers, but you're just sitting and waiting for it to magically drop into your lap. No, you need to be looking around. You need to be researching. You need to be considering options. Sometimes you have to throw a few things at the wall and see if something sticks. And when it sticks, you check to see if it's really sticking there or if it needs to be removed. But you can't find answers that you're not looking for. You have to be
So we
looking.
titled this episode, "Is This Risk Too Big?" Because it felt to you like you were choosing your children and what they needed. So that clarity, you were very clear about what the priority was. But at the same time, in honoring that priority, you knew that you were creating this big risk that was not just professional but financial for your family, right? So as you guys made the commitment, you started the move, you started this move into the entrepreneurial space. What thinking, because some people get stuck in the anxiety of the fear, and it inhibits their ability to show up for themselves. How were you able to take those natural conversations of self-doubt, of I don't know what, I don't know, I got to figure all this stuff out, feels overwhelming, all of those stories, how were you able to find your place? If you could give any tips to people to kind of in that moment of deepest anxiety of transition, about I just blew up my life. I just took a really big risk and blew up potentially my financial and my professional life. What insights can you share with them about how you think you were able to channel your thoughts and actions to get through that most difficult time?
Turning your fear into fuel. You can't worry as much if you're busy, meaning if you're really intentfully pushing forward. So here are my fears. How am I going to pay this? Where's it going to come from? That fear should equate to, okay, I'm going to email 100 people. I'm going to reach out to 100 people asking about particular opportunities. I'm going to apply for 100 jobs a day, because that fear is, I'm turning that into, rather than just sitting here and hoping I got the 2 jobs I applied for, I'm putting more energy into that. That in itself is keeping you busy, number one, but it also is making space psychologically for you that, you know what, again, if you do the work and you work hard, the universe is going to make room for you. So reminding yourself, am I doing everything that I could possibly do? Right? There's a song I grew up to that after you've done all you can, you just stand. But if you're not doing all you can, then your worry is going to be higher, because you know that the effort isn't being put out, and also you still don't have what you're looking for. So take every fear that you have and convert it into an action plan. I'm afraid of how I'm going to be able to support financially. What options do I have? What business can I seek? If I can't seek it from an entrepreneurial perspective, what type of funding is available? What type of program maybe I need to sign up for? But try to feed that with the fear that you have. I don't know what it's going to do to my family, because sometimes when you have a diagnosis, families get separated for a while. How am I going to cope with that? Okay, what agreements do I need to do? Turn my fear of us being separated into we set some parameters for how we communicate daily so that we're
I
there,
love that.
we're able to love on each other and support each other where we need it. Okay, I'm afraid of what this is going to do to me mentally, because one autistic kid is one thing, but two is a whole other story. So how am I going to cope with my mental capacity? By showing up for myself, making sure that I exercise so that my stress levels are lower, but also that I'm humbling myself to listen to the story that's being said that says, hello, you need a mental break. Someone needs to relieve you. You need to be aware of that and have a process and plan and action. I truly believe that the fears that we have and the things that keep us bogged down and fearful are a lot lighter burdens when we connect them to action and we're doing something about it. So when we're not doing anything about it, that's when it feels really hopeless, because we know that the doom is there, it's near, because zero work, zero effort is only going to get you zero. So in order for you to get a higher result or the number that you're looking for, you have to quiet that noise. And I know it's not easy. Trust me, I can tell you that fear and those thoughts sometimes make you feel like you don't want to do anything, but you have to start telling yourself, start responding to the stories that are the voices that are in your head speaking to you. Oh, this ain't gonna work. It's only a matter of time. No, it's not a matter of time. You know what? No, this will be better. I can't control who hires me, but what I can control is how many jobs I apply to. I can't control who likes me, but what I can control is my approach and the way that I treat other people, because that will make me feel better about myself. So, what is in your control? What is in your circle of influence? What is in there for you that you can tap into and do those things? I promise you, those are going to make you feel better. They're going to put you in the best state of mind. And then you get to this point where the story, everything you tell yourself is positive affirmations that build yourself and that you believe, because as you achieve more, you're going to believe more. I believe more. My faith hasn't been stronger than it's ever been. My daughters were 3 when they're diagnosed. They are 10 today. They are 10 years old today. And all from a decision to make a step in a direction that I had no clue how it was going to turn out. I didn't know what God was going to do the next day or the day after that. And I still don't have the answers, but we operate on a one day at a time basis, and we turn our fears into focused action. And that's how we make it through the day.
There we go. Turn your fear into focused action. I think you laid that out beautifully. Thank you for sharing all of that with everyone today, Tirsa. It's so important. You are not alone. You are not alone, and you have more capacity within yourself to get through whatever that challenge is than maybe you believe in trusting yourself about right now because of those stories. So take some of Tirsa's confidence, take some of her advice, turn that fear into intention, and start acting from the place you want to be. Because that's the other thing, Tirsa. You are acting from the place that you want to be. And that is a huge, huge, huge differentiator in navigating through these times. So I'm going to pop Tirsa's website address up here one more time for all of you. And again, you can find her on TikTok. You can find her on Instagram. She has a YouTube channel at Tirsa Hall. You want to follow this. I'm sure you can find all of this on her website. Tirsa, this has been so powerful. And you are a tremendous model for all of us navigating these kinds of struggles, because you're helping us understand it doesn't have to be a struggle. The struggle is allowing those stories appear. And then once you have your vision, I love this quote that you shared. I'm going to go back and grab it real quick. Things that matter most must never be at the mercy of those that matter least. Once you get that clarity, and whatever you have to do to get that clarity, you might need the help of others. Once you have that clarity, and now you start turning your fear into intention, you have a path forward that you own.
Yes.
You don't have to be at the mercy of anyone else. No. And you can just trust and believe in yourself. And, you asked for help. You did things to grow your skills and knowledge There's a whole, I mean, we could go on for an hour, but we don't have an hour. But if you want to know more about Tirsa's journey, I would say feel free to reach out to her, and most definitely you want to follow her and what she's doing. She's doing amazing stuff. Thank you for being with us tomorrow. Come back at noon. Dr. Tandra Price, who is created her own media company and is doing amazing things to bring the spotlight to Black excellence and women, is here. We are in International Women's Day is coming up at the end of this week. This is Women's Month, and I'm so excited to celebrate Tandra and all she's doing. So make sure you're back with us tomorrow at noon.
Yes.
And then we have 2 episodes at the end of the week, and you'll see me previewing those. So thank you for being with us today, and I'll see you tomorrow. Bye, everyone.